All right, what's up, everyone? MK Tom Brady here, joined once again by Mike Hollow, back from his trip in Japan. And how's everything going, Mike?
Yeah, everything's really good, man. I'm in good spirits, in good health. Very happy with my trip in Japan, and been paying more attention to Mortal Kombat recently. I've had a lot of people asking me if I'm ever going to jump back in, so I did watch a bit of Combo Breaker. I have been paying attention to what's going on. Obviously, I watch Sikander's streams, I watch your videos, and obviously Homelander's just dropped, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, everything's good, man. Can't complain. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I was really looking forward to Homelander. The boys. I'm a huge fan of the boys. One of Homelander to me. Normally, I don't get very excited for DLC characters just because very rarely do they actually like. The word iconic is overused too much. There are very few characters that are truly iconic in their lore.
Yeah.
Homelander being a little newer, but just because of the popularity of the boys, is he just really happened to catch on, and I think that's a perfect character for MK. So I was pretty excited
Yeah,
for it.
I so I was very against the whole superhero aesthetic of Mortal Kombat 1 because it just felt too injusticey. But seeing Homelander in the game, I'm kind of 50-50 on him because I like Homelander the character. I like the graphic novel of the boys. I think the TV show is really good. But there are elements of how they've designed him in this that I really like. And then there's things about him that I feel like they just didn't even bother. I don't know how you feel about him because you obviously love the character, but I'm a bit like disappointed with some of the animations and some of his attacks. They look very like lackluster and quite boring. I don't know if you noticed that weird kick that he does to sort of launch you. It just looks
Yes,
like he's
yeah.
not even trying. It's very weird looking. But then some of the animations, like where he grabs your hand and he like breaks it, or he shoots you in the face with the eye laser and then just drops you, is like very on brand. And they caught the essence of Homelander really well. So I'm a bit 50-50 on him.
I think they caught his essence really well. I like that he is somewhat of a high flyer, but not. Normally with NRS games, when they make a high flyer character, it's just mindless maniac, jump, 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 jump. Homelander seems a little slower, which is a little more controlled, which I think fits his essence. He's very calculated. So I did like that, and I liked that Homelander is similar to Ermac in the sense that he does not need a cameo to exist and do the basics, which so many characters do.
Mm,
And I feel like that's good because it gives some, okay, well, what cameo are we going to pick? Hopefully it's not Chameleon like with everything else, or Janet, or just Movado, which is kind of the route everything is going right now. But it feels like you can pick a cameo to enhance him rather to make him have to play the game. Like so many characters can't even play the game without the cameo, and then there
yeah.
are just a few that can play the game, and the cameo is the plus one. And I felt like that I was really excited for that, and because they went that direction with Ermac, and obviously I was hoping they went that way with Homelander as well. So I was pretty excited to see that at the very least.
I think that the way they did Omni Man was pretty good because he is very like rush in your face, give you 100 punches, and then sort of throw you across the screen. And Homelander's more methodical, and he is a bit slow, even though he's like Superman and he can do the same things. He's very slow in how he like kills you. So I thought that was all really good. Disappointed a little bit in some of his animations, but especially because I thought Ermac looked so good. Like we didn't really do a talk when Ermac came out, but
No,
for anyone that was wondering, I thought Ermac looked fantastic. I think he's probably one of the best looking characters, if not the best looking character in the game, both in general design and the way he animates. So Homelander was like a little bit of a step back, in my opinion. Also, his face in some of the close-ups looks a bit weird. I know that's nitpicking, but to be fair, even with Tekken, when we saw Steve Fox, everybody was a bit like, what the hell's going on there?
yeah,
So,
with
yeah,
Ermac
I
I
think it's a
felt
bit
like
50-50.
with Ermac I felt like the that really showed that this game was probably 8 to 9 months behind more than people thought. They were thinking, oh, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, not even close.
Yeah.
That it probably took 8 to 9 months to really complete a character from where they were at launch. Ermac, everything animation wise looked clean. His character portrait even looked more vibrant than the rest of them.
Yeah.
So I noticed it. So I was thinking, look, a little janky animations for Mortal Kombat. That's almost like a cliche at this point. There's always going to be characters that have those janky anime. It's just kind of like the NRS special, unfortunately, which MK has kind of been known for quite a while across many MK games. So that didn't surprise me, but I am kind of interested to see how he plays overall, though. So we'll see tomorrow. And I'm assuming there'll be no patch just because Final Combat is, I believe, 10 days away. And that just means that everybody else is waiting probably till after Evo for them to actually do a little bit. And, I compared this to Tekken where they did a lot very early, a big step in the right direction. I believe a lot of people were saying that. MK did a tiny step in the right direction 9 months in. Tekken did a big step in the right direction, as at least what you hear about in the videos, like opinions aside, the general consensus is how the game is going to be judged, right? So people seem to be more happy with that. And MK, it's like they gave us a little bit and everyone's been like dying for when there's going to be more. And last update, nothing. This update, more than likely nothing. So I'm probably not going to see another change until August, which is a little disappointing.
And do you think that, so with the current state of MK, because I have been tuning in a little bit more, do you think it's going in the right direction, or do you feel like it's stagnating?
I feel like the game is kind of. I do feel like it's starting to get stagnated again, because like I'm watching Combo Breaker, and look, I'd be wrong if I said there weren't some entertaining situations and matches, which there were. But when you're in the top four, and then it was, I saw Sonic Fox, whose adaptation was Armored Launcher versus Unjust. Unjust says, okay, I'm going to torpedo with Movado for an Armored Launcher. Then I'm watching Sonic versus Johnny Cage, Armored Launchers. And, and I'm just like, this is, I feel like the game is a bit too simplistic. Full screen move. What makes an assist meta, I believe, is the problem. The characters are not designed for there's always going to be a meta assist. There's always going to be that. So every game is going to have that. So no matter what, you're always going to have a few assists that don't get picked. That's just the way the game is. But what makes an assist meta in this game, largely because 90% of the characters cannot physically play the game and even do the basics without the assist, is your assist has got to allow you to instantly close the distance safely, or keep your turn, making everything you do safe up close or plus, and make sure everything you do also combos that normally doesn't combo. One of those 3-4 things. And just some assists don't have a meta ability at all. So they are unusable. And even if you buff their cooldown, if you buff all the cooldowns across the board to be like Chameleon, that will only make the meta assist be picked more. And like if you say, okay, let every Cameo have a Chameleon cooldown, well, Cyrex is the most meta of all meta assists. So why play Kano, why play Striker when you can play Cyrex again, right? If you're a more complete character like an Ermac, what would you do? You would play Janet. Why? Because now everything combos. You don't need a Cameo to exist. So the game would boil down to Janet Cage, Cyrex, probably Chameleon, and then Kung Lao for the fast Cameo, right? For the fast whatever. It would still always be a 3 or 4 Cameo game, because I feel like the characters just are not made to function outside of being complete. And then the problem is, even if they were complete, then everybody would just pick Janet. Like if they were to, for example, buff Sub-Zero in a way that I think many would think he should be buffed, we would just pick Janet Cage then, so everything combos. I mean, I think if every character were buffed up to be more complete, we would just pick a Cameo like Janet or Movado or someone like that, where we don't need the Cameo to exist. So now we want to make sure everything launches, including armored moves and including everything. So then everything is going to launch and you'll still have 1 or 2 cameos. I think the way the game is designed, it just shows that NRS needs to go away from the gimmick systems. They have had this love for whether it's going to be the variation system in MKX, which was close in some ways. Just the flaw of it was you'll have a character with a powerful move that's so powerful that everything needs to be balanced around it. So when you switch to a different variation, the normals still have the drawback from the one powerful move of the other variation. So the other 2 variations don't work. And we see some instances like Takeda that he had 3 good ones. So you had some instances where the variation system worked, but too many where it did not. Sorry about
Yeah.
that. I had my phone on there, boys. And it didn't work in MK11 with the variation system. Again, they just couldn't get it right. With then was going to be custom, and then they went away from that with another gimmick system. And I just don't understand their obsession with the gimmick systems. I feel like
Would you say
you can.
that the gimmick systems they lend to the strong sales of Mortal Kombat because we know that a lot of like casuals and people that are not part of the fighting game community just pick it up and they're invested in that particular flavor of the month and then they move on to whatever else they're doing because Mortal Kombat games churn out much quicker than Tekken and Street Fighter.
So when it comes to the casuals, I think a lot of people always look at MK as it's the casuals game, which first of all, Street Fighter and Tekken is the casuals game because
Yeah.
sales aside, casuals will spend money to leave their home and attend a tournament for Tekken and Street Fighter. They will not for Mortal Kombat. So it just goes to show you which the casuals, when push comes to shove, will spend more money to play the other games than they will even MK. Now, the reason why I think MK gets so many sales, it's because they churn out a new one significantly, faster than their competitors. So Tekken is normally out for significantly longer. Street Fighter is out for significantly longer. They'll churn out different versions of that game, but MK will give you a whole new one, every 2 years. Aside from MK11, it's been every 2 years, every 2 years. And I think that they capitalize on the impulse buy, and then I think the gimmick systems kind of do that. I would love to see a chart of how their sales go from start to finish.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat the name does sell itself, and but I do feel like at a certain point MK9 did a lot in selling MKX and 11. I feel like the lore of MK9 out there really helps the game sell as well. Like the older players get into the game, and then the casuals are always going to play. The casuals are going to play every fight. I hate when they make it seem like one fighting game is more so the casual game than the other. Every fighting game is a casuals game. The casuals dominate sales of every single game, whether it's Street Fighter, Tekken, or Mortal Kombat. And so I just feel like MK sales come from a place of it's always going to be a newer game, and that promise that this new game will be what you wanted and be better than the last one. And they're going to, you know what I mean? It's like they sell the promise, which I feel like with MK1, you see it started selling really well. And then the player count dropped almost immediately. It was like people bought it and realized it's not what I wanted. So I know a lot of people bring reference to sales of look at how successful the people love it. But look, if I went to a restaurant and paid for the food, I cannot like the food that I paid for, but I did pay for it. You know what I mean? So people can buy the product and just say I wasn't happy with it. And I feel like that is more so MK's reputation now. People
Do
buy
you
it,
think
and after they buy it,
do
they're
you
not happy with it.
Do you think that there's different levels of casual players though? Because one thing that I've realized, obviously, I haven't been a part of the Mortal Kombat scene, obviously, since I made all those videos about Mortal Kombat. I sort of stepped out of it, but I know a lot of people that still play it, but they're not part of the FGC. Do you think that in terms of what you're saying with tournaments, that there's different levels of casual players? Because I would consider myself like I'm not a pro player. I know how to play the games to a decent level, and so like I went to Evo Japan, and I'm gonna go to versus
Sure.
fighting, but I think I'd probably still sit in the casual realm just because I'm not competing in the tournament. I kind of play them for fun. It's just that I have a YouTube channel. But I wouldn't. I would probably enter a Tekken tournament, but I don't think I'd enter a Mortal Kombat tournament. And I think there's different levels to casual players. I think a casual player like myself is likely to turn up at tournaments and play for fun. But Mortal Kombat players, like the wider player base, not the people that we speak to on YouTube. I've noticed that there's a lot of those players also play games like Madden, FIFA, Call of Duty,
True.
and I feel like they're like the real casuals, like the people that play SmackDown versus Raw and all that sort of stuff. they're not like casual like me. That is, I'm a casual fighting game player. I feel like Tekken and Street Fighter have more of those.
Yeah, so what I feel like is that in general, the FGC is not as segregated as people make it out to be, where there's Tekken players, Street Fighter players. The modern casual plays them all. That's what makes them a casual. They play multiple games, right? So I think the casual will go to a tournament for Street Fighter and still maybe enter Tekken or vice versa, right? They'll enter the mystery game tournament, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I think MK has a wide audience of people who will go to a tournament, play every other game except Mortal Kombat, even though they play it. Which just tells you that, like the mystery game tournament was a Combo Breaker was made up of people that play Tekken, Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, right, Grand Blue. Like it's made up of all those players, and part of Tekken's audience was made up of Street Fighter players and vice versa and whatever. MK, I feel like there. I know that there were many people there that play MK. They just didn't enter it, and I just feel like they're not getting. I feel like they have faltered so hard with their casual audience that most of the casuals that enter games like Tekken and Street Fighter, MK's version of that will not travel and enter MK. Especially when you have pro players saying it's not worth my time to fly over there for $10,000. That message says this game to a pro player is so agonizingly unfun that they are literally saying, oh, I'll just sit home and make money. It's not worth my time to travel for whatever, which if they're all making the kind of money they all claim they do, spoiler, they're not, traveling to a tournament would be a business expense and you can write that off. I know, I have my own LLC. I know all about being able to write anything you can possibly do for your business. If you're a content creator related to fighting games, going to tournament is considered a business expense. You can write that off. There should be no problem there whatsoever. But when a casual player hears, man, here's a guy who could potentially win a tournament with 10,000 on the line, telling me that's not worth his time. So clearly, I mean, Tekken players could have said the same thing, right? A Combo Breaker. It's not worth JDCR, anybody for any tournament could say, or whoever is going anywhere for any tournament can always say, it's not worth my time. Look, all the top Tekken players could make content and still do just fine money-wise, right? However, they still show up to the tournament. Why? Because they want to compete, because they also love it. They enjoy it. They want to win, there's the money, but they love the game. They still enjoy the game. Mortal Kombat, it just seems like the sole reason to play it is for financial gain. And it's just like, it's so unfun that $10,000 is not enough money for me to travel for this game. For anything, in my opinion, to be not worth my time for $10,000 on the line, it would have to be one of the most agonizing things I ever do. And I have to, and MK, I feel like, is in this place of denial where people can actually pretend to be positive. Oh, I'm positive about the game, while simultaneously saying it's not worth my time to travel for $10,000. You're still saying you think this game is not very fun or enjoyable.
yeah.
So
there's like no love of the game there to travel.
Yeah, but they're masking it behind positivity. No, it's all about business, you know. Look, dude, if that's how you really feel, you're saying all you have to say. You're being just as negative as people that actually voice it. And I hate that it's being as negative. Like, in this world right now, we only, for some reason, have shills and complainers. If you praise stuff you like, you're a shill. And if you criticize the game, you're a crybaby and a complainer. I think the lines are completely blurred now with, like, there's no in the middle anymore, at least when it comes to Mortal Kombat. Like
That happens with everything. Like even everyone overuses words. Like you said, you say anything, you're a shill, or you say anything, you're a crybaby. Even like the word toxic, everything is toxic now. You can't say anything without being branded toxic. And it's one of those things where the word gets overused because people hear it a lot. But I wanted to ask you, speaking of traveling to tournaments, obviously Combo Breaker has just ended. I assume that you probably tuned into Mortal Kombat.
Yep.
How did it compare to the other tournaments there, numbers wise, and how was the audience with Mortal Kombat? Like, what was the general feeling around the game?
So compared to Tekken and Street Fighter, it was absolutely dreadful. The fact that Third Strike can still compete with Mortal Kombat says a lot to me. I do not see a world in which like at Evo, Third Strike is beating Mortal Kombat. I don't see a world in which UMK3 would beat Street Fighter 6 and the Street Fighter 6 community would say we thriving out here. I I think Mortal Kombat is in a state of serious copium in which Combo Breaker this year, this was the second highest combo breaker for Mortal Kombat ever by one entrant. MKX in 2015 had one less entrant than today. But overall, I feel like Mortal Kombat 11's numbers are kind of an anomaly. I feel like MK11 coming off MKX, so MK11 got such big numbers because not only did it come after MKX, where some of the MK9 players had kind of rubbed them the wrong way, so a lot of them kind of dipped out on that. So it brought a lot of those players back, like players like Kerbo were at Combo Breaker for MK11. He didn't really play MKX, you know. So that whole quote unquote the return to footsies back to MK9 got a lot of people early on. And then it also followed Injustice 2, in which people are, you know, the NRS community, like, in the zoning, Injustice 2, the zoning, you know, it's too much zoning. So I feel like the hope that it would be a little more neutral based from MKX from a large portion of people, even though I felt I enjoyed MKX quite well. Yeah. I enjoyed both 9 and X. And combined with it's following Injustice, and people were just ready for Injustice 2 to be done. The NRS community, more than any other community, cannot stand certain archetypes, especially zoning. And I feel like there's some serious copium here with the MK community because MK11 had a few months where it was really big and then it dropped off by over 1,000 people from one Evo to the next. Maybe even, you know, I think it lost 1,300 people from one year to the next, which is a quite big drop off. I truly think, I think that early on MK11 was kind of an anomaly and the community this is really where we actually are. Without the people's hatred of Injustice to really power, like, thank God, it was like thank God MK is back. One MK was out of sight for 2 years. People were excited for MK to go back to that more MK.
Tom, you keep breaking up for some reason.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, I think maybe when like I don't know if you're hitting something keeps cutting you up.
Oh, how am I now? Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. I don't know. Maybe if it's when you raise your voice, it might cut out for a second.
Oh, maybe. So, I was saying that I feel like MK11 was the big numbers early on were just a combination of people not liking Injustice 2, and they were kind of hoping for more of the MK9 pace to come back. Yeah. You know, MK9 is kind of like this, you know, through revisionist history put into place. It actually even wasn't. You know, it was not this, holy grail of fighting games, even though it's described like that in many circles. But this scene has not grown. The MK scene has not grown. It's basically, MK scene is like, get rid of the people that are older, bring in more teenagers or early 20s, get rid of them. It's just because the game keeps changing so much. It just shows the game to me is not growing. You're losing way too much of your audience. And I really think it's because of these gimmicky systems. I think the reason why we get into games, we love games, that you got into the game because you love it. You wouldn't be spending your money to travel if you didn't. Well, NRS takes everything that you loved about the game you got into and removes it in the next game. And for a lot of people, they just don't love it the same. Tekken and Street Fighter are more about legacy. They do change, yes, but a lot of what got you into the game is still there. They may change it, they may tweak it, but they will not remove it. NRS, they will remove it and then just hope that they just seem very content on, get rid of everyone that's older and bring in a whole new scene, and get rid of everybody again and bring in a whole new, get rid of everybody again. That's kind of like MK cycle, and that's why the numbers are the way they are. They're just, whenever you get into a game that you're willing to spend money to travel for, well, when all those things are removed, more chances than not, you're not going to like the next game just as well because nothing that you fell in love with is there anymore.
Yeah, it's very hard to retain an audience when you're doing something like that. But I think that gives more credence to the idea that they don't cater the games, even though they do Final Combat and all that stuff. It's more apparent than ever that the game is not for the like hardcore player. It's now for the, everyday pop on for 30 minutes and then tune out kind of player.
I do think that. I think it's now about, and maybe that's why they try to make them so simplistic. It's about
Yeah.
pop on, play 30 minutes to an hour, maybe 2 hours, stream, whatever, do your YouTube videos. And then I think that's kind of what it is. I feel like it's almost designed like a seasonal ARPG, where it's designed to, whenever their new quote unquote Combat League season starts, kind of garner interest for the first 2 to 4 weeks, or maybe 2 to 3 weeks, right? And then it's kind of like dies down completely for the second month, which is the character is when the big everything happens. The Combat League kind of resets, new skins, new everything. And then the next month is the Cameo, and it's kind of like designed like to really go into snooze mode during that second month where the Cameo gets released, and then have things pop off again for 2 or 3 weeks, then go into snooze mode for another month, month and a half, then pop off again for another 2 or 3 weeks. That's kind of like the cycle that they're kind of going on right now for the game. But what happens when they're done with DLC content and the players that are stuck playing the game for another year or two? Like, what do they do then? Now, when there's
It tends to die off very quickly once the DLC cycle ends, doesn't it? Normally they support it for 2 years, and then after the final character, it sort of starts to
Well, they say
dwindle
this
off,
is
and
going
then
to
we
be a
get.
4 year. Ed Boon is like, well, quote unquote, apparently the word on the street, this is going to be like a 4 year cycle. But again,
Didn't they say that about MK11?
they
They didn't say
did, they
four
did
year, but they said it was going to be longer, and it turned out to be the
longer.
same.
Yeah, and overall, I think in MK11 we saw a lot of people, even Ed Boon were kind of like, why are people always looking for new content? And it's almost said like NRS players are never happy. They always need new content, whereas other fighting game communities don't need it as much. That's because that's how we're conditioned. Their formula has been, at least now especially, just do something to bring interest for 2 or 3 weeks, and then have it die off for a month and a half, and kind of go into a lull, and then repeat. And then when the content stops and there's no more, well, the game does not seem to have the substance to keep everybody, playing it.
Well, I did want to, now that you speak of substance, there was something I wanted to mention. I don't know if you noticed it in the Homelander combat cast, but Homelander has an attack where he sort of claps your ears and it creates this ringing sound. And they showed a counter hit property where if you go to attack him and he does it first and he claps your ears, he gets a full combo from it. I was watching it, I was like, oh, they do know what counter hits are. Like they've given Homelander an actual counter hit mechanic. So I was sitting there and because obviously I made that video. I don't know if you remember about all the changes I would make
Yep,
to
I
Mortal
remember.
Kombat. And so they've given one character an ability that all characters in all fighting games enjoy. And I'm just like, is that a test to see if counter hits work in Mortal Kombat now? Because obviously they've given it to Homelander, which is great because every character should have that. But I don't know if you saw that and what your feelings were on that.
Well, for one, I love that because people that don't like the boys have to remember that the ear clap comes from when there was a hero blind spot when they were trying to fill a role on the seven. And this guy is blind, but he's supposed to have super hearing, whatever. So Homelander clapped his ears, and the guy was completely worthless. That's where it comes from. So I
Yeah.
really love that they kind of, had that kind of detail in. However, I do like the counter hit mechanic. Uh, I I've seen they've had things before that would say counter, but I don't think that it is. There's been actually a different mechanic to it.
Because it
So
changes the function of the attack. You get
yeah,
a full combo after it.
yeah. So that's something good, and maybe they're kind of experimenting with those kind of possibilities. I just, again, I my take on it is it's good, but the pace that Mortal Kombat is advancing is almost as slow as Evolution. So it's like, it's very slow to advance.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that, obviously. with the new mechanic, but it's just it only for Homelander to do it. What about everybody else? And I mean, I don't know.
It might be a bit difficult at the point that we're at now to give everybody actual counter mechanics because, as you know, a counter mechanic works on every single attack. Every single attack in every
Mm-hmm.
game changes when you get a counter hit. So at this point, it might be too difficult. But yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and be brazen enough to think that my video was seen by them and they thought, oh, let's give it a try. But it's nice to see that they're. I don't even know if they've done it intentionally, like, oh, let's test counter hits and see how they work in Mortal Kombat, because I think they would go such a long way in MK, because you do get a lot of people that are like mashing down one or just mashing buttons at full
Mm-hmm.
screen or whatever, and it would teach the player base to not press buttons, otherwise you're going to eat more damage. So I hope it's something that we see going forward. If they do like an MK1 aftermath or whatever they decide to call it, and they do an overhaul for the gameplay, that more characters have counter hits. So I was really happy when I saw that. I was very, very shocked. But clearly they understand how the mechanic works.
No, and I feel like the ironic thing is they have tried so many different things with Mortal Kombat, but they've all been gimmicky. And yet they don't try the solid stuff that is tried and true that we know are good for adding depth. So they've been more than willing to take the easy route, so to speak, and implement something quick and gimmicky and not, counter hit mechanics, things of that nature, which could have a huge impact. Like, I feel like whether they implement it in this game or not, I feel like that is a step in the right direction overall, because hopefully, if it's not in this game, maybe in the next one, they can say, okay, let's no more variation system. Like, literally, if they just made MK like a fighting game where there are counter hit mechanics and things like that, that adds a ton of depth, a lot more than a cameo system or variation system does. So hopefully, I think that this could be a step in them finally getting away from the gimmicky mechanics and onto the more
Yeah.
solid ones.
Yeah, I really hope so as well. Just a quick mention, I did think the Melina costume was really, really cool. I don't know if you saw it right
I
at the end.
did
I don't know
see
if
it.
that's a
Yeah.
new costume, but I was like, that's a really, really good costume. If they're doing more stuff like that, as long as it's not priced at something ridiculous, I think that's something worth purchasing. And then obviously we got the birthday shouts at the end, and I like how they said everybody's favorite segment. So clearly they know people do not appreciate the birthday shouts, but I thought that was quite funny. But just like MK in general, because I know that you're still like very much like you're still making your content, I still watch your videos. How are you feeling towards the game now? I know the general consensus in the community is a little bit more positive because at one point it seemed nuclear. But how are you feeling towards the game?
Me personally, well, for me, I'm very disappointed in the game. Mortal Kombat, for it to be not fun for me at all is, MKX was probably the first time I was not one of the maybe a top 10, top 15 player in the world. Like, I was probably more top 30. And like, I was 40, 41. It wasn't, you know what I mean? I had a good run, right? Eventually your time, and that's still pretty good to be that good, at that point. But,
Yeah.
changing of the guard, it's part of life, it's what happens. But I still enjoyed it. I still had a lot of fun with it, regardless. So, uh, and when I look at MK11 in this game, it's not fun for me at all. It just feels too um, bland to me. Just for me as a Sub-Zero player, there are just a few things that rub me the wrong way. Like when I see Johnny Cage in the beta go pretty much untouched, he's dominating now after he was nerfed. And then they released Day One Johnny Cage with Day One Cyrex, and I'm going, how is this balance? I mean, their whole thing for a long time was they were watering their game downs to make them more balanced and less like Nine, less like X, and yet still such an imbalanced product comes out at launch. But they thought, oh, Sub Zero was the issue. We tone him down. It to me just I'm
What's
just
going on
like,
with Sub-Zero? Has there been no like significant
yeah,
changes to him? Because I watched
no.
Sikander's stream and he still seems to me it seems like he's struggling using the character. Like obviously he's doing well, but Sub-Zero to me looks like he's really struggling because when I watch Sikander playing Quan Chi, apparently Quan Chi's not like a super powerful character, but he looks so cool and it looks like he's got so many
Yeah,
setups and
it does.
he's
It's
got
very
very
fun.
cool animations. But Sub-Zero just looks like he has like nothing.
Yeah, so Sub-Zero, it's kind of Sikander is when I hear Sikander, it just reminds me so much myself in the old days of MK saying the same things. So basically, the Mortal Kombat community will always overrate Sub-Zero. I mean, the fact that in the beta he was nerfed because he was the most complained. In the beta, when you had Beta Kenshi, Beta Johnny Cage, all this, and yet Sub-Zero was the most complained about character, just goes to show you that nobody in the MK scene has any clue what they're talking about. There is, in every game he has an ice clone, a clear bias of hatred toward that move. And Sub-Zero will always suffer for it. They will always try to say he's top, he's the best, he's unstoppable, greatest thing ever. They will always say that, and yet
I'm not gonna lie to you though. MK11 Sub-Zero gave me PTSD.
yeah, well, he had no
That
clone in that game. So, and it's kind
he had no clone, but the overheads and
yeah,
the load,
yeah.
it drove me
They
insane.
made it, yeah, it was so simple. It was like,
I think
yeah.
MK11 drove people over the edge. I think that's the image of that people have of Sub-Zero. And now, even though he's clearly a shell of his former self, when you see Sub-Zero, I think everyone that's been playing Mortal Kombat for a long time just remember Sub-Zero and MK11 because it was honestly, I know he wasn't the strongest character in the game, but it
He
definitely
was
felt
the
like that when you're playing online.
least effort, highest result in MK11. And I feel like the community has too much PTSD. They have PTSD from the Ice Clone days. They have PTSD for his offense. So Sub-Zero is in a place where people do not want him to have Ice Ball, Ice Clone, or any of these other mechanics, right? Slide being good. They don't want, he shouldn't be able to be defensive. He shouldn't be able to trap you. He shouldn't be able to freeze you. And then even if NRS says, okay, well, we'll make him offensive, he shouldn't be able to rush you down. Shouldn't. So they don't want Sub-Zero to have an overhead, a low, an ice clone, an ice ball. Basically, NRS has PTSD'd people with the way they've made him to they can't do anything with him anymore. So in my opinion, I think they should just remove Sub-Zero from the game and never put him back.
They'll never
I'm,
do that.
I'm
He's a
just
mainstay.
I'm just dead serious. There's nothing they can do with him. If they get rid of his overhead and lows, even if you're outplaying people with clones and just knowing what they're going to do with trapping, they'll still say, oh, clone, broken, etc. If you get rid of the clone and you're just getting rushed down and mixed, they'll say, oh my God, broken, mixed. So they can't remove it and make him more trapping and strategy because that'll be broken. They can't remove that and make him more offense and mix because that would be broken. Probably the Johnny Cage can ram moves down your throat and they will praise the Messiah for this being in the game. But Sub-Zero cannot do his thing. Johnny Cage, there's no opposite of him, right? And it's almost like there's not allowed to be an opposite of him. I feel like Mortal Kombat more than any other game is, and I just think MK players don't do well dealing with things that are frustrated. I heard something that Sajam said a while back, which I agree with. Newer players are not, by the way, they're not born smarter or better at games. They have more technology. They have more access to competition. So, of course, they're going to level up. You're always bound by the technology of your time, period. And they're great players in every other game but Mortal Kombat. I feel like Mortal Kombat, only a handful of players could really survive. MK right now, they can't. If you teleported these players back to MK9, 99% of them would quit the game. They can't handle it now. There'd be a handful. We all know who they are, like the very top of the top. They'd be fine. They adjust.
Yeah.
What do we? Broke Maker, the zoning. Broke Maker's back. This zoning. Injustice 1, Injustice 2. They couldn't stand that game because of zoning. You're going to put the majority of players in probably one of the most zone-heavy games in fighting game history? No, they wouldn't. I just feel like MK players do not deal with things that are annoying well, for the most part. If somebody's running away in zoning, they want it removed. If somebody's grabbing you to death, they want that removed. They want everything removed. So MK is in a weird place because the community doesn't want you to be able to do anything. So it's just really, really difficult, which is why Johnny Cage is dominating. Johnny Cage dominates because you can't really keep anybody out, especially him. And I for archetype. Okay, so if you remove all the archetypes from fighting games, offense always wins. Period. And Johnny
Yeah.
Cage is the most dominant character because for offense, for archetypes to work, they all have to be present. Otherwise, it breaks it. If you have an offensive characters, whether it's mix or pressure, defensive characters, whether it's zoning or kind of lame out, trapping characters, grapplers, high flyers, it all works together and they all kind of rock paper scissor each other, right? So there is no one best. Oh, the offensive styles are the best, or the defensive ones are the best, or the zoner is the best. They all kind of rock paper scissor each other. As soon as you remove one archetype, it breaks the chain. And then one has an advantage over everyone else. So then they start removing those. And then you're just left with no archetypes, so offense always wins. Besides Peacemaker, it's just throw out full screen move, come in, and then do X, Y, and Z. That's pretty much what this game is. And I'm a little disappointed that it's kind of boiled down to that. And so many things that I remember that are fun in MK. What made MK so... most people don't understand because they're young. MK has never been about the fatalities. I don't know what moron actually thinks MK is about the fatals. The fatals got Mortal Kombat on the map at the Senator Lieberman trials. But after Mortal Kombat 1, the fatals didn't do anything for MK. Every other... do you know how many games thought, oh, Mortal Kombat was about the gore and tried to make gory games? They all failed. It's because Mortal Kombat has always been about the characters and how original they are. And then the more you make characters kind of all do the same thing, and then which one does that same thing better, the more you take away from what MK was. MK was always this... like, look at Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero has always been like that more methodical type of trapping character, etc. Scorpion has been more of a maniac, the 3D games aside where they're all kind of different, but those are their identities. And now Scorpion's kind of watered down, a shell of himself. Sub-Zero's kind of watered down, a shell of himself. The only characters that seem to do what they've always done are the offensive ones. Because I think that's really like all that's kind of, I don't know. And I'm disappointed with the balance of the game because, we just see less and less cameos. There might be a nerf to Chameleon tomorrow, who knows? But it's not balance. Balance isn't you see them all the time, then you don't see them at all. They nerf Cyrex, he's gone forever. They nerf Stryker, he's gone forever. If they nerf Chameleon, she'll be gone forever. This is not balance. We used to see at least a healthy variety of Johnny Cage and Raiden. Then they nerfed Raiden, and they went from at least a decent amount of Raiden to not one or two, 0. This is just not balance at all.
So they've wiped Raiden off the map now, basically.
Wiped him off the map. Now and the cameo usage really shows you the characters being picked. Chameleon is picked, I didn't count Combo Breaker, but the last online Pro Series, top 8 combined, East and West, Chameleon was picked 90 times. Second most was Goro with 30. So that's just... and then after Goro came characters like Kung Lao, and etc. And this just shows you those cameos were being picked because most of the... and then Johnny Cage, the majority of the characters picked were Johnny Cage. So the cameos he uses get used the most because he's picked the most. And then there's Peacemaker, which is going to give you characters like Kano or whatever or something like that. Chameleon also as well. And then you have characters like Ermac or other Kung Lao that are going to give you Johnny Cage because of her cooldown, so you get launchers off everything. More. So. It just shows that the character usage is not as much as people think it is, and the cameo usage kind of shows that, because it's kind of like being dominated by the same 4 or 5 picks, and even Kenshi for some reason. I love when people say Kenshi's hard to use. Anyone that says Kenshi hard to use has 0 fighting game knowledge whatsoever. And I would love for them to play a game like Virtua Fighter 4 and tell me that Kenshi is hard to use.
Yeah.
They don't understand what hard to use actually is. So the game to me is dominated by a handful of characters, a handful of cameos, and if the only reason to play the game is for money, then this game will always be a game with a handful of characters and there's just a handful of cameos and everyone's going to be doing the same thing. That's kind of where I see the game right now. It's just not very enjoyable.
Do you think that because I was talking to some people that still play Mortal Kombat, and they were saying that they're fairly confident that the leaks around Season 2 or Combat Pack 2 are true, and that characters like Noob Saibot are going to be in there. Do you think that we're going to see like more guest characters because there's already so many guest characters in the game, or do you think they're going to focus more on like bringing back some of the characters that are missing?
I think once again they're going to go with the gimmicks, the guest characters. Um, I don't think they're going to go with substance to sell the game. I think they're just going to go with something gimmicky, um, which is unfortunate because when you go with something quick just to make some money, sometimes they put cool characters in there and they don't. Uh, so I think they'll be. I've heard like Ghostface was talked
Mm.
about.
I heard
Um,
Chucky was spoken about as well.
Chucky as well. I've heard that as well. There obviously will be a season two of DLC. I'm pretty sure at that. As long as season one is selling, season two will sell. Um, but really, this is, and I'm surprised this doesn't get broached as well. Um, I feel like sometimes in the cameos, because Ed Boon put like a feeler out there, like, hey, if we did a guest cameo, like
Yeah.
from one of the MK1 movies, who would you want it to be? I feel like the cameos are kind of going a route where they nerf the default cameo and then implement a new paid cameo, right? So imagine telling somebody that your character doesn't work unless you pay for an additional cameo. I have a serious problem with that.
What are you
Like,
saying? Like the character that they release is not going to be as good unless you pay for the upcoming cameo to go with him.
or like, for example, like Chameleon, imagine you're like, oh, Sub Zero, for example, right? Say you pick the game and you want to play Sub Zero, and you're like, man,
Yeah,
he's not very good. What's going on? Well, pick Chameleon. So they're basically telling you have to buy a cameo on top of the money you already paid for the game
yeah.
for your character to work.
Oh, of
So
course, yeah, because the cameos cover certain areas that they're weak in.
yeah. So it's like, I mean, I feel that they're definitely going to keep doing more and more paid stuff, but I feel like the paid stuff is overriding the current stuff. Right now the DLC characters besides Johnny Cage, Peacemaker is very dominant. Ermac is doing good. All the DLC, so you mainly see like a lot of the DLC cameos used. Peacemaker you see a lot as a DLC character. Not so much DLC character wise, but DLC cameos are just running wild, and the rest of them are not even being used at all. So what I
They
worry
do seem
about is that,
obsolete.
yeah, so I worry about that. They're not so much pay to winning the characters in some respect. I think in some ways they are because I feel like Ermac was a lot more complete than pretty much any other character made.
Yeah,
Peacemaker as well. So if you look at the newer characters, they seem to be more updated versions of the roster. And then you look at the newer cameos, and they all seem to do something similar in a different way. Movado. Oh, I'll make sure that armor moves launch for the most part, and things that normally don't combo. It's they're just finding
yeah. I did
better.
see Movado. He everything Omni Man does now is like a
As
launcher
launcher,
because of
yeah.
Movado.
They're just making cameos find more ways to do what other cameos, so it's overriding other cameos. Like, why would I want to play a cameo like Sonya that can make most things but not all launch? If I can play Movado, and not only do I get throw combos, I also get combos of other stuff, and my armored moves will launch. They're just giving you making the newer cameos overwrite so many of the old ones. So now
How do you feel
there's
about
no reason to
Farah
pick them.
then?
Farah, so again, with Farah, that I'm kind of interested in.
She looks unique compared to the
She
other ones, I'd
does
say.
look unique. She does look unique, and I'm just looking for them to start doing some unique cameos that really, because right now it just seems what is dominating is your cameo has to either make everything safe, make everything launch, or get in for free, and if a cameo doesn't do that, it's just not good. So I
Yeah.
want to see them have a cameo do something so original that it's like this is none of those things. I mean, look at Shujinko. He's been buffed 100 million times, and people still don't use him. Johnny, he's supposed to be good against Quan Chi because you can do Quan Chi stuff. But if you're a Johnny Cage player, why would you pick Shujinko over Goro or Chameleon? Because Shujinko is not going to give you make all my moves launch, make everything safe, get in for free. He's not giving you that, so it's still not enough. So it just makes me wonder what could they do that's so original that trumps that.
Do you feel like the cameos are becoming a pay to win situation?
I do feel like they're becoming a pay to win because if I look at the ones that are the most used, you look at Chameleon, Janet Cage, and Movado are used significantly more than the other cameos.
Yeah.
Significantly more. In the finals, what was it? I think Sonic Fox was using Sindel, right? But he used her with Sub Zero. No, not Sub Zero. He used it with Kung Lao. But he went to Omni Man with Movado.
Yeah.
Unjust was using Peacemaker with Chameleon and then Movado. I think the Johnny Cage, Nicholas, wasn't he using Chameleon?
I cannot remember because I only tuned in to watch the Omni Man matches.
Yeah, so and there was a lot more. I would say the most popular pick cameos are Janet Cage, Chameleon, and Movado is picked a lot as well. We do see a lot of Goro, but that's only because there's also a lot of Johnny, and some of them would prefer Goro to that. But
Yeah.
uh, and Kano for Peacemaker. Peacemaker gives a lot of Kano action also. But for the most part, I think the DLC cameos are the most popular picked ones because now I feel like every DLC cameo is going to do that, where either everything's going to be safe or everything is going to launch. And those are the two meta abilities. So as long as every DLC character makes sure everything launches in some way, shape, or form, or everything is safe in some way, shape, or form. Now, of course, if they make a cameo, the reason why Chameleon is still so dominant is because she can make many things combo in certain situations, like everything she does combos, and she has two abilities that makes everything safe, etc. So she does them both. So
Yeah.
right now, because she does them both, she's the most popular. And then after her, you have like a character like Janet who makes everything combo, and now Movado in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, it's disappointing to hear that the cameos are sort of being treated as a pay to win situation and the older ones are almost obsolete. But what I wanted to ask you just before I forget is say that they were to buff Sub Zero hypothetically and they made him really, really powerful, or they brought out a new Mortal Kombat game and Sub Zero's in the game and he's really, really strong. Could you see yourself returning to the tournament scene and trying to go for a top spot?
See, for me, and this is where people misjudge me, I don't care if Sub Zero is strong or not.
Yeah.
I just want him to have his own kind of stuff and make it work. Like if you're going to give him Ice Clone, make it work or don't give it to him. I feel like in gaming, there is, in order for you to have stuff that you find fun, everyone else has to have stuff that they find fun too, right? And the beauty of fighting games is everybody's stuff is annoying to everybody else, right? Like what I do is what I would want to do is annoying. But with
Yeah.
people either getting in on me and throwing me 500 times, or high flying all around the screen, getting around clone, or zoning me so much I want to slam my face against the desk because I got to chase them down and clone is not doing anything because they're zoning me out. And everything people do is frustrating and annoying, but it's still fun because we're all doing our own things that we enjoy. And there's countermeasures to that. And you're more motivated to find an answer because you also have what you like as well. So it's frustrating, but it's still fun because everyone's doing the things that they love, and they're also simultaneously annoyed by everyone else's stuff that we don't love. That's fighting games. So whether Sub-Zero is really powerful or not, I just want him to be able to do what Sub-Zero does. Sub-Zero has always been that, and they don't have to, they can change him around. Doesn't have to be with clone. Give him ice shower then. Take him a new direction. But just
Yeah.
don't handcuff him, and say, oh, well, people may be annoyed by this, so we're going to go ahead and handcuff you so it doesn't really do anything. So as long as he is still, doesn't have to be super strong, but still good in his own unique way, I could
Yeah.
see myself coming and playing again. But as long as Sub-Zero is going to be punished for, I don't know, being annoying, I guess. Look, I don't know if you know this. Johnny Cage ramming his knee in my face, that's really annoying too.
Say that
So
again. So it broke up.
I said Johnny Cage ramming his knee in my face over and over again. That's hella annoying to me. You
Yeah.
know, what's fun is that kind of a stalemate. Johnny Cage versus Sub-Zero kind of match. Those are fun for me. Even when I'm being zoned out and I have to get in, that's really fun for me. Just I feel like him being in a place now where nothing works, and for the answer, oh, just pick Chameleon and do what everybody else does. I'm like, well, I'm not playing Sub-Zero. I'm playing Chameleon. And if they were to nerf Chameleons, that like MK1 has kind of a weird case where characters will drop from being really good to horrible without ever being nerfed because they're carried so heavily by a cameo that without the character being nerfed, the cameo gets touched and they drop to bottom tier. I would love to see whether in this game or another MK, them make Sub-Zero more solid again. Even if he's the worst, I wouldn't even care because MK9 he wasn't super top, but you could still make it work. I could definitely see myself returning if they stopped punishing him and gave him tools that are not really usable.
Yeah. So for you, really, it's they've sort of neutered him, and he's not fun anymore.
He's not fun anymore. It's an overhead that works on players who are less than casuals. So you really, like, I know if you were to take this character, like if you were to take this at a certain point at the highest level, those overheads will get blocked every single time. And then you're just pretty much doing slide into Chameleon. That's pretty much what is powering him right now. Being able to do a full screen safe combo starter. And even if it's baited, it's not safe, right? But it's tough because, and I know it's annoying because people can't move around because you got a constant full screen combo starter coming at you that hits low. So I know it's annoying. And then you've got, getting mixed in the Melina variation. And then Jade pretty much lets everybody get in for free. But I mean, to me, that just makes him play like everybody else, and he's no longer Sub-Zero. I'm just doing full screen move into Katana, and just generic mix-ups into Melina, and it's not really like his own tools don't work. If he tries to clone, he's dead.
Yeah.
At the highest level, if you're playing like someone like Nicholas or someone like that, and you try to ice clone, it's going to be a shadow kick into a launcher. If you're playing someone like Gambro and you clone anywhere on the screen, shadow kick Goro, you're going up. You can't even use it. You can't even use some of your moves in half of these matchups. So you're just pretty much only using Chameleon. And you're not going to mix anybody that's good. They're always going to 9 more times than not react to that slower overhead. So I feel like Sub-Zero is someone that has a cap at a certain level. That when you take him and you get to, now I have to go, I've grinded so hard, now I have to go up against Ninja Killer or Sonic Fox or Nicholas or Unjust or someone like that, you are guaranteed to lose unless you switch characters. That is not fun. There's no answer. There's no answer. Either Chameleon is going to get you through it, but Sub-Zero won't. And that's just not enjoyable to me. So
If there was a world where they made a fun Sub-Zero, would you step back into the tournament scene? Do you think like watching these guys, you could take them on?
So I'm old, but I do think that I would love to try. I mean, I've out of all the MK players, I'm the only one that's been able to go from MK1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at least, right? I mean, through all those
Yeah.
generations and still take on the newer players. I would love to try, but the thing is, for me, the playing the game was the enjoyable part. Competing was always enjoyable to me, but the game was also extremely fun, and it made me want to compete and want to grind. And hey, I played this guy. He was doing something that's he's really good. It was hard for me to fight him. Beat me 30 straight. It made me want to come on the next day and say, how am I going to beat this guy today instead? When you take away that joy of the game and you basically just say, oh, it's just about beating the young players for money to prove a point. Well, proving a point is not fun. And the pennies you make compared to what you need in the real world is not enough. It doesn't bring me any enjoyment. So if they did that where I actually enjoyed playing the game, I would love to be able to play some of these players who I never got a chance to compete against at least one time.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to see you come. It would be really like something to see you come back and like win a major tournament over a lot of the younger players.
But that would be like Tiger Woods winning the Masters. I think that would have that
Yeah,
kind of
you know,
effect.
it would be sick.
But I do want your take on this. So when
Mm,
Akuma got released,
yeah,
obviously a lot of people were looking like, what Tokido was doing with Akuma, right? That was a big kind of like, people were like, early footage of Tokido, right? Doing whatever. Uh, because people do get known for characters, right?
yeah,
And I feel like NRS in removing archetypes has also removed some of that buzz. Like now,
yeah,
like an MK, content creator wise, high level player wise, less than a handful of players as high level players get shine on YouTube or whatever, right? It's usually Sonic Fox, Ninja Killer, and then you'll have Foxy, who doesn't even compete anymore. He's all about content, right? But outside of maybe 5 people as serious hardcore competitors, there's not that buzz. It's always, well, what is Sonic Fox doing, right? That's pretty much all people care about in MK. Like, what is
mm,
Sonic Fox or Ninja Killer doing and nobody else? Street Fighter, they don't say, well, I don't care about Tokido. Show me what Daigo's doing. Because they realize Tokido on Akuma is something that they'd much rather watch than Daigo on him, right? Because he's known for
yeah,
that. He has an MK because they just remove so much of what characters do and make characters more kind of like one dimensional now. I feel like a lot of that buzz gets removed by removing that archetype, by removing that player connection with character. I just wanted your thoughts on that because you don't really see that with MK. Players aren't really connected with characters anymore like they used to. But there's
yeah.
still
I
that
can,
way in Street Fighter and Tekken.
yeah, I can definitely speak to that because Scorpion's always been my favorite character in the lore, and for a long time, even though they switch things up in Mortal Kombat a lot, I really enjoyed playing him, but they keep on changing him so much that the character is unrecognizable. Like Scorpion from MKX till now is a completely different character. I lost complete interest in playing Scorpion in MK11 and MK1. MK1's version of Scorpion might be the worst in terms of like character expression and being able to be versatile with him. He's so boring. And not having that in a fighting game is really, really a massive L in my opinion. It's a big letdown. Even in Tekken, for example, when Eddie was coming out, everybody was wondering, I wonder what John Ding's Eddie's going to look like because he's known to be the Eddie player. He's the Eddie. When if they drop a Mishima trailer, immediately I want to know what Main Man thinks of Kazuya. Right, he's a Kazuya player. Everyone knows him for that. With with Street Fighter, yeah, Tokido, Daigo, Ryu, and to a lesser extent Guile,
Snake Eyes with
Zangief,
Zangief.
Snake Eyes.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. What other characters were there? Trying to think off the top of my head, who was known for? Oh, there was Sagat, Bonchan. Um,
Yeah.
like there were characters that I was excited to watch people play and learn from them, and that doesn't exist in Mortal Kombat because they keep on throwing it out, and that's a really really it's lame. It's really disappointing every time I see a character change so drastically, especially because in Mortal Kombat 10, I fell in love with how they designed Scorpion. All three of his styles I thought were fantastic. I thought I believe the Hellfire one was the one where he could set himself on fire, and it was great
Yeah, I
rush
think they
down there
captured Scorpion. Like they captured that essence of Scorpion, right? They really,
perfectly.
really did. Absolutely perfectly. And
Because,
Scorpion and Sub-Zero were polar opposites. Sub
Yeah,
Zero, look, that game was pure unga bunga, right? But Sub Zero was more corner pressure, more methodical to get you there, and had to find more interesting ways around stuff. Whereas Scorpion would just go right through you in any
yeah,
instance, just nonstop aggression, canceling. You had to be careful where to hit a button because he's just going to do anything in a Hellfire. You still can't respond. He was all over the place, teleporting, EX launcher, just because why not? Just do it, YOLO it. Scorpion was very much embodied in that. That is, if I think about Scorpion, I'm like, this is how I would imagine Scorpion. And now
exactly.
he's just doing a spear spin over and over and over again into a cameo.
It's so painful. Do you know when I look at Scorpion in Mortal Kombat 10, he reminds me of Ghost Rider, and Ghost Rider is like Ghost Rider just runs through
Yeah.
you as well. Like when
Yep.
you think of a phantom or a raging skeleton that is on fire, you're thinking of something that is just running at you full speed and you can't stop them. And the Hellfire variation really showed that off really well. But then they had ninjutsu where you got to see his more like the ninja side of Scorpion. He was using his two katanas. That was really good. That wasn't my favorite style, but I really appreciate that they added that because that's part of Scorpion's lore.
Yep.
And then the style that I used was Inferno, which was the one that showed that this guy's from hell and he's summoning creatures from hell. So every
Minions.
single
Yeah.
style showed Scorpion's personality off. The problem with MK1 is that it's not even Hanzo, so you can't even show that side of Scorpion because it's not even the same
They
guy.
literally got
He's
rid of. They made two people that used to be Sub Zero, Scorpion and Sub Zero. Like,
I don't know what the logic was behind that, and it makes even less sense for Scorpion because his personality was very fiery as well. He was angry at what had happened to his family, and it showed itself through his moveset. But the new Scorpion, Kwai Lang, I think, he's very like calm and rational and level headed, and I'm like, this is this is a lukewarm character. He's Sub Zero, like he's
yeah,
very relaxed. He's exactly what I remember the old Sub Zero to be, the good one. It's just he's got a scorpion skin now, and it didn't make any sense to me. But that aside, that shouldn't be an excuse to not make the gameplay fun. And I feel like they completely have missed the ball in terms of people being able to lock into a character. And when we sign onto YouTube, we're like, that's Tom Brady Sub Zero, that's Bonchan's Sagat, that's John Ding's Eddie. That's completely gone in Mortal Kombat, and it's a shame. Even Smash Brothers has that, and I see Jigglypuff, I'm like, that's Hungry Box, like it's
yeah,
all of these games have these sort of things. Even when I was watching the old, do you remember Budokai Tenkaichi, the Arena Fighter Dragon Ball Z game?
yeah,
Even on that, when I used to watch that, there were people, I've forgotten their names now because it's been so long. I think one of them is Poem or Poet. But when I'd see these players, I'm like, yeah, that guy, that's a Piccolo player, that's a Broly player. It's really important to
I
have
used to
that
watch
in
tournaments
fighting
of
games.
Budokai 3. I was quite
It's such a
entertained.
good
Yeah,
game.
I was quite entertained by it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
very,
did.
very good game, and even to a lesser extent, Ninja Storm even had that. I can't remember the names of the players; they were French, but I'll be like, yep, that guy, that's an Itachi player. You don't even have to tell me who it is; I know who it is, and that's just non-existent in Mortal Kombat. It's a massive shame. And the thing is that I don't want them to build a legacy for Mortal Kombat One because you're building it on shaky ground. They would have to start again, but then you run the risk of, okay, we're starting again. Are we gonna do the same thing all over again? So it's like I don't know when they're going to get it right. I don't know if Mortal Kombat players even particularly care about this stuff. It seemed like they were going down that road in Injustice, because Injustice 1 and Injustice 2, the characters didn't change too much. But I felt like Injustice messed it up as well because they didn't. Like, I played Black Adam, for example. It felt like exactly the same character. It didn't feel like there was an update to him. He just felt the same, but
Yeah, Justice
stronger.
1 and 2. Yeah, they pretty
Yeah.
much remade. Yeah, yeah. I
They,
feel
it was
like
a copy and paste.
copy and paste. Yeah, a lot of the originality. MK has taken a lot of their originality out, and most people think MK was known about for the fatals, but like I said, it's really about the originality.
Yeah.
Um, it's about they have been so in a game in which everyone copied Street Fighter for the longest time. A lot of other games copied the Street Fighter blueprint. You were going to have your Ken and Ryu clones and other games, right? Just like Street Fighter. And MK went off of that. Nope, Scorpion and Sub Zero are different. They're not, clones of each other. Their characters and their games have always stood out from the other games. And Street Fighter being the first, obviously games that followed that formula were never as popular. And MK, in an era where Street Fighter dominated, went their own way and was very successful. And have always been original. And their characters have always been original. Now it doesn't really, there's no soul in the characters, which is why there are no character specialists anymore. I'm not saying that has to be a mandatory thing, but you don't think of players anymore. Like when you think of Scorpion, you think of Javier right now, or who? When I think of Scorpion right now, I think of Slips. I think of obviously Javier and like MK now. There's also in MK X, there were so many good Scorpion players overseas. You had Mirko over in Russia. You had so many.
Yeah, I remember Mirko.
Mirko was very, very good. You had a
I
lot.
played Mirko on MK11.
You had a lot. Raptor over here became an excellent Scorpion player. MIT as well. You had a lot of. I mean, I don't want to keep going. I'll leave somebody out, so forgive me when I do. But you had a lot of good Scorpion players. And when I think of Scorpion, I think of what those players were doing. And now I just think of a name. Nothing comes to mind. If somebody says, what does Javier do in MK1? The same thing every other Scorpion tries to do. Because that's all you can do. And it's, like, I definitely feel his pain. He's mentioned things like giving Scorpion a cancel to be more like MKX, I guess, which would be a good idea. Like, hey, give him some life, give him some originality back. But right now it's just really very, very bland. And I don't think of, when I think of players playing a character, like nothing comes to mind. Like, oh, this is what they like to do. They do Peacemaker. I'm not like, oh, there's Unjust, that Peacemaker player who he's going to run away and gunshot you and do torpedo and to assist to make it safe. That's every Peacemaker that will ever exist. None of that is. Oh, here's this Baraka player. He's gonna do this and that and Tekken assist, and that's no different than every other Baraka player is gonna do.
I think part of the reason that happens is because if you look back at MK9, MK10, execution wise, they were pretty difficult, right? So you had to put time in to learn the characters, and you would know who has actually put time into this character because you'd see very specific
there were archetypes.
Things with certain
That's
people.
The thing. There were archetypes. So, for example, if you hated dealing with zoning, you are not going to play Sub-Zero because that's your life, getting zoned out. You may pick a high flyer, like a Kung Lao type of character. You may want to pick a counter zoner. And it wasn't as simple as, oh, just pick Cabal because he's number one. Because it's not easy to play Cabal. When people say, oh, it's not easy to play Kenshi, that is a joke to me. Like, it's not everybody could play Cabal, right? It just wasn't as simple, Kenshi. Right?
The new Kenshi, the MK1 Kenshi.
You're like, oh, he's so hard. Not even close.
No, he's not hard.
Not even close.
He's not.
No, getting a sandwich situation and ramming out an overhead or low, and then, that's not particularly rocket science.
But I don't blame the players for that because obviously
I don't blame it
at
all.
Mortal Kombat. Yeah, we played Mortal Kombat a long time ago, so there's we can compare. But even like with Tekken 8, I'll speak to some people about Tekken 8, and they're like, "Oh, this game is incredibly difficult." And Tekken 8 is still hard because it's still Tekken.
Sure.
But when you compare Tekken 8 to Tekken 7, it's like Tekken 8 is hard for different reasons, and they're not good reasons. But if you go back to that Tekken Tag 2 and Tekken 7, those are harder games to play at like a higher level and stay consistent. So I think newer players, when they see Kenshi and there's two characters on screen, immediately to them, then maybe they're like, oh, this is difficult because I'm doing more than you. But in reality, it's just... whenever I'm watching Kenshi, I'm like, this looks like nonsense to me.
Yeah, I think, one, it was big because, this is my honest opinion, MK9 has got a million issues. It's barely even functional in some ways. Not fit for modern tournament play. But if they re-released it, I think it would kill MK1. I think that would be the last day of MK1. I think MK9 would take the current MK players and a lot of... I think it would actually have a bigger tournament scene than MK1 MK1. Not saying that the old tournament scene was bigger, but I think a lot of the skilled players who are looking for, now obviously look, it's got its own a million issues, balance issues, bugs everywhere. It is not functionally anywhere near MK1, not even close. And the quality of life is just going to throw a lot of people off. So it's kind of a weird thing where people would like the less of the ease of use factor of it, but the quality of life would turn a lot of people off. There's no buffer for punishing on normals. There's no reversal window for specials. There are a handful of bugs in the game that are just devastating for competitive play. So but if they remade it and got rid of all those things and kind of updated it with a buffer for punishing and a reversal window, I think it would absolutely slaughter MK1. What I think MK players, and this is why I said, while in other games, I think today's players, a bunch of them could be as good as any era back then or now. In NRS, I don't believe that. I think you have maybe a handful of players who would survive like the MK9 days. But just mainly, I want people to understand who are like, that's cap, Tom, almost everybody. I want you to understand how much people today, how much they quit Injustice 2 because of the zoning. So keep in mind, a lot of players quit Injustice 2 because they couldn't stand zoning. They complain every day about...
Me included, by the way.
They complain about, quote unquote, broke maker zoning. And you're going to put them against Cabal and MK9, they would quit the game immediately. Nothing. Yeah. They wouldn't even win or lose. They would just quit the game and say, I don't want to play this. You know? But that is how a lot of us feel about MK1 also. So I feel like, you know, most MK players don't have that welcome to fighting games that every other scene has. You know, where, look, this shit is annoying to fight. MK players do not like things that are annoying. And they want them physically removed from the game, so they get removed from the game. And I think, like you said, a game like MK9, I'm sure a lot of people would just say, oh, I'll just play Cabal. But it's not as simple as saying, oh, I'll play Johnny Cage in MK1, right? Like even Peacemaker, oh, I want to zone, I'll play Peacemaker. Cabal isn't like that. It's not easy. So you can't, not everybody can do that. That's the difference.
Yeah. I do also think, though, that even
and
it's
about skill sets, by the way. It's not about skill or execution. Everyone has their own individual skill set. Do I believe Ninja Killer could play Cabal? Absolutely. Why? Execution is part of his tool set, right?
Yeah.
Amongst many other things. Yes, absolutely. But there are many people who that just doesn't fit. So people go to characters that fit their skill set. But when the most dominant things in the game are the most dominant because they're the easiest thing to do with the highest level of effectiveness, then you remove skill sets and it's like, okay, everyone's just going to do this and everyone is the same.
Tom, you still there?
Yeah. Oh, did I break up again?
Oh, sorry. It cut out. Yeah, cut out.
What I was saying was skill sets are a product of how the characters are. Like I said, if everybody just can't play Cabal because it doesn't fit their skill set, right? So somebody might still zone, but say, hey, playing Cabal doesn't work for how I want to zone. So I'll play Freddy, for example, right? Or maybe not Freddy, nor Cabal work for me. So I'll play Kenshi. And somebody might say the way Johnny Cage is doesn't work for me. So I'll play Sonya. You're both rushing down. You're both being a little aggressive, but you're doing it in different manners, right? Just the way the game is. And I'm not saying just MK9, but fighting games in general, this is what makes fighting games work. People pick characters that fit their skill sets based on what their skill set allows them to maximize on. It's kind of like, it's almost like a symbiotic relationship, right? Your strengths cover up the character's weaknesses and the character's strengths cover up yours, right? It's a very symbiotic relationship and based on your skill set. But when everything is very easy to do to the highest level of effectiveness, well, then everybody can just pick the best 2 or 3 characters and everything's the same. And that's kind of where MK1 is right now. I think
the difficulty is too low.
Not everybody could play Scorpion in MKX. Not everybody wanted to do cancels, right? Not everybody wanted to do that. Not everybody could play. Not everybody played Liu Kang. As dominant as Liu Kang was, you didn't see a ton of Liu Kangs because not everybody could do that to its highest level of effectiveness. So they
Yeah.
would just pick somebody else. And in this game, it's like, nope, pick Johnny Cage, pick Peacemaker because it's not very difficult. It's very easy to do, highest level of success with the least amount of effort. And it's something that will fit everyone's skill set because it's not like a skill set thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm actually really looking forward. I don't know if you're gonna play Homelander, but I'm looking forward to
Yeah, I
seeing
am
how
going to play
people
it.
deal with him because he looks like I don't know if noob killer is the right word, but when I was watching him play, I was like, this character's got things that are gonna really piss off people that don't know how to like block or like respect another character. Not just the eye lasers, but the ear clap as well, the counter hit. I think if that manages to catch people the way I think it will, that's gonna like change how some people approach him. I don't know if he's gonna be a necessarily hard character to use. He doesn't look. It didn't look very difficult from what I could see, but he has got flight cancels as well, so that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, the disappointing thing is if what you're saying is true, what will happen is they'll just have NRS nerf him.
Hmm, that would be disappointing.
That's kind of the disappointing part about it. That's kind of the direction they've gone. So
I think NRS needs to stand on business. Like that is when I saw that added to Homeland, I was like, okay, they understand what this is. This is something that can be given to everybody for every single move, like all fighting games ever. So if people start complaining about it, I think the NRS needs to ignore them and just work out a way to implement it for everybody. Even if they can just start with special attacks and they learn how to do it properly with those, I that's a massive step in the right direction for me. And a couple of people have been asking me if I'm ever going to play Mortal Kombat again because I was very stern on my stance. I'm not playing MK1 again. But the only way I'll turn Mortal Kombat 1 on again is A, if the game was re-released like Aftermath and there was an overhaul to the gameplay and it feels like a fresh game, then I'd be more willing to give it a chance. And B, that they don't go backwards now because this looks like they're going in the right direction. But I say that, but then you have a character like Sub Zero that has a move that clashes with fireballs, but is the only one that does. There's like a couple of other moves that might evaporate them, and they didn't seem to like
yeah.
really go further with that. So I don't know.
Well, I think what I would like to see is if that is very successful, then add it to other characters as opposed to tone an aspect of Homelander down.
Yeah, yeah,
Which,
definitely.
that's what I would like to see them do. Okay, well, you know what? Rather than take it away, let's give everyone some form of ability and expand on it. Maybe more than one move will counter hit per character, etc. And expand on that and move forward, which is what I would like to see them do.
Tom, I'm not sure why you keep cutting there.
Oh,
There's like heavy cutout for some reason. I don't know why.
what I was saying is what I would like to see them do is um, expand on that counter hit mechanic and like
Yeah,
say, I want it to come to a point where it's like, okay, let's give Homelander two or three and everyone two or three kind of moves that can counter hit in some way. And this will take a move that has no purpose and otherwise worthless. And I would love to see them give it to some of the cameos, to be honest with you. Like, uh, Frost Punch Rush, if it on counter hit launched you into the air. Okay, well, then you'd have to be careful if she throws it out from range, right? And you're running into it. I would just love
yeah,
to see little things like this that can it's a small change in theory, but it would have heavy and drastic effect on the game.
yeah, yeah. No, that would be nice. Well, I mean, I feel like we've covered everything that we can with Mortal Kombat. I did want to ask you about Tekken, though. I don't know if you've been keeping up with
Yeah, I
Tekken and
have. I
what's
have.
going on in the scene. Are you still playing Tekken?
No, I feel like whether it's Tekken, Mortal Kombat, or Street Fighter, social media has made it very hard for developers to balance fighting games. Um,
Yeah,
Everything is always wrong, and they don't know which way to turn. And I think Tekken is included. I did see your video about Tekken fatigue. If
yeah.
I'm not mistaken, a lot of the people you mentioned are near or in their 30s. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, King J is the one that brought up the discussion.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of people were saying, oh, it might be because you guys are getting older. But I've always known the Tekken scene to be one of the older scenes anyway, maybe just behind Soul
True.
Calibur and Virtua Fighter. And when I was growing up playing Tekken, I was always one of the younger guys in the scene. And
True.
you had people like Cobra Commander and Lion-O and all those guys. They were much older. They were in their 30s. Some of them were even in their 40s because I was playing Soul Calibur with some of the older guys. So I don't think it's because people are getting older. Because before Tekken 8 came out, I was playing Tekken 7 the day before I played Tekken 8,
Not
and I
because they're
didn't feel
getting
this at all.
older. It's a combination of getting older and the extra responsibility that comes with it. You have a lot more on your mind, and it's tough to enjoy a game when you've got a lot of shit on your mind. And the world today will do that to you. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but I do
Yeah,
believe once you hit a certain age, I mean, it ain't cheap to live in the world these days. You know, there's a lot that we have to do to get by, and a lot of responsibilities. And as you get older, you have other things like family. You know, with parents get older, kids, wife. You have a lot more people than just you, and it's, you know what I mean. It's just harder to sit there and just grind all day. And it's, now I understand the mental fatigue part as well, but I do feel like social media has made it impossible. Tekken 7, for example, is the game they said was too defensive. What when Arslan Ash made his tweet, what did everybody start saying? Oh, he just wants to backdash all day, right? Remember that? He wants to pick infinite stays and backdash all day. So Tekken 7 was a little made to be more defensive. People wanted more offense, and they got more offense, and now they said, now we want less offense. But if they
yeah,
took too much offense out, then they would just say, oh, there they are, just backdashing away again. So it's like, you know, people want defense, and then they got heavy deep. And I saw a lot of other videos from a lot of content creators saying the problem is, you know, when the option is doing nothing is better. At the end of the day, when both defensive and offense are equally powerful, really good defensive players are just going to beat the majority of offensive players. Just because defense is harder to do than offense, and most offensive players are not used to coming across people that have strong defense. So the argument that defense was too strong is really largely only used as an example with a handful of players. Offense, you could use a million people as an example why offense is so strong. But it's so rare to find someone who has that defense that if you're not used to it as an offensive player, it's frustrating. And you're like, well, this is too good. He doesn't do anything. And he just, you know, he outspaces me, he whatever. It can be a very frustrating thing because it's not something you commonly encounter. For the
yeah,
defensive player, you think how many more a defensive specialist encounters a million times more Unga Bunga players than Unga Bunga players encounter a true defensive specialist. Would you agree?
yeah, yeah,
So think of the advantage the defensive specialist has. It's never that defense is actually, oh, it's too good. It's that they have so much more experience dealing with this than you do with that. And I feel like in Tekken 7, they're like, we want more offense, we want more offense, we want more offense. Now in Tekken 8, they have more offense, and the first thing was, now there's too much offense. So now Namco has to find where the balance of offense is, and no matter which way they go, you'll still have people saying there's too much offense, and others saying now there's not enough of it, they ruined it. So it's very difficult as a developer today with social media. Now, obviously, feedback is great, and the ability to get feedback today in the modern era has greatly advanced games, but it's
yeah,
also done a lot of harm because developers don't know which way to go. They can no longer, a developer's vision doesn't matter anymore. They, a lot of times, have to bend the knee to what the audience feel the vision should be. And I think that's very difficult for a developer.
Tom, you still there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know why I'm cutting out. What I was saying was, I think it's difficult for a developer to really
Yeah,
have their vision of a game shine through because social media puts the pressure on, like, this is our vision for the game, and more often than not the developer has to bend the knee and completely throw out what their vision was for what a million other people have individually as an idea. It's just social
yeah,
media has just been, I think it's been very hard on developers and makes it very difficult to balance a game.
But don't
Extremely.
you think that the knowledge that the Tekken team has acquired over the years, it wouldn't be the first time that they've received backlash. Don't you think that they would have more smarts than to like keel over and listen to people that maybe don't understand Tekken to the level that they do?
I feel like we're in a day and age in which if you saw an episode of House, that you should have the same opinion as the surgeon who's gone to medical school and been operating for years, right? Well, my opinion should be heard. Just because
Yeah.
you did this doesn't make it right. So the problem really is everyone thinks they know better than everybody else, and everybody is either downplaying or capping or whatever the hell else people say these days, right? I mean, like, so it's really hard for a developer to know which way to go. And this is look, you Harada. Tekken Tag 2, you came from a place in which you were on the hot seat to even work there anymore. And now this is the peak of your success. So clearly you want people to feel like you're listening to them. So you are
Yeah.
going to bend the knee a little bit. Just just because they've never had this level of success. And if they don't, it'll say, well, this is why they don't listen to anybody. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants this, oh, their team doesn't listen to feedback. You might as well call them NRS. So I feel like they are very conscious in in today's day and age, the audience has to feel like they're being heard and they have to feel like changes are being made based on that. Unless you're the Capcom community and they just accept the way things are. I think Tekken, this is the first time this has been happening. And this is why there's so much unrest in Tekken right now, because they heard people wanted more offense, then they got more offense, then they didn't want more offense. So I feel like, social media has had a big impact on tech. And they don't have the patience anymore. Like in Tekken 7, I feel like they could develop the game a certain way, bring it in arcades. And they had that time because they weren't under the social media microscope as much as they are now. Unfortunately
Yeah.
for Harada, Mortal Kombat being a big, faltering largely, everyone kind of shifted their eye to Tekken. So MK's faltering put every eye on Tekken. And in a way that Tekken had never had all eyes on them before from day one. So a lot of people that enjoyed the last days of Tekken 7 don't know what it was like. People that played in the beginning, people that played Tekken 6 BR, they didn't play regular Tekken 6. They don't know about
Yeah.
that, right? So they don't, Namco's always had their time to perfect it without, I guess, the social media backlash. Now, from day one, they've had all eyes on them, and social media has been a big, very more influential on Tekken than I feel like ever before. I'm not really sure if you agree, but
No, I think social media definitely has an impact. I think I'd be lying if I said otherwise. I think with Tekken, I think there's a lot of frustration right now because Tekken is a legacy fighting game, and with Mortal Kombat, I think people are probably more willing to be forgiving, and that's probably reflected in like the numbers. That's why the scene is always very quick to like push back when there's some negativity. But with Tekken, we're very used to Tekken being a certain way, and this is the most radical change we've seen since Tekken 4, I would say. So I would say this is an even bigger change than what Tekken 3 to Tekken 4 was. So
oh
I'm
yeah, it
not
was
surprised
huge.
that the pushback is so big. And I have been like a Tekken diehard since I was a kid. Tekken was like one of my first games. I remember getting Tekken 1 when my parents got it for me. So I've been there from the beginning, I'm not one of the players that jumped in Tekken 5 or Tekken 6 or Tekken 7 or whatever. And when like you're attached to something, like I love Dragon Ball and One Piece, but and Tekken's like that for me in gaming, and I guess the Yakuza series. And every part of me, when someone was like slandering Tekken in the Heat system, wanted to be like, "Nah, man, it's Tekken. You just don't know what you're doing." Blah blah blah. But I would be lying if I said that this was not the biggest L in terms of a system that they've put into a Tekken game. We ran a tournament, not a tournament. So we were doing a stream the other day when you called me, and we did it for about 8 hours, and the stipulation was no heat. So you play in the matches, and as soon as the match starts, you pop your heat and you waste it immediately. It's gone in like 5 seconds,
Hmm.
and then you play Tekken, and not a single person the entire time that we played said that let's go back to heat. This is boring. I really thought that after all the videos that I made, that I was about to eat my words, and this game was going to be boring without heat. We played for 8 hours straight, non-stop, took no breaks. We had such a good time, and it felt like Tekken again. It felt like the better player was coming out on top every single time. It didn't feel like I've made one mistake. King has pedigreed me. Now I'm waking up into an RKO and it's doing a billion damage. Even the moves that have armor on them that people complain about a lot, suddenly they weren't overpowering. So it's been 5 months now. I've given Heat every single chance to like be good. I've tried to look at it from every single angle. It's just a bad mechanic. This is unfortunately like if you even if you take away social media, you take away people bitching online, looking for negativity. What people like to say you're farming views for negativity. You take that all away, and you just look at it objectively. I, Heat is almost indefensible in my opinion. It's this that bad of a mechanic, and it's Tekken's core gameplay makes it worse because the core gameplay of Tekken is special. It's something that doesn't need to be touched too much. You just bring out a new Tekken game, update the characters, make a couple of tweaks here and there, make it look more beautiful looking, improve the music, and people are going to be happy. But they took such a radical step, and the system they put in place overwhelms the core gameplay. Like it's crazy how much it changed and how much the moves felt different without Heat being there at all, and how you could not, I wouldn't say turtle, but how you could be a bit more defensive because you're like, okay, I'm not constantly guessing for my life and somebody's not
It brings
running in my
back risk
face. Where
reward. That's why it brings
yeah,
back risk. Heat is pretty much a slap on the wrist when you're wrong, maximum reward when you're right. So it
yeah,
makes it
exactly.
very difficult. And by the way, you're going to be stuck in holding that situation. Do not sidestep dock. Do not try to backdash. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. You're going to hold that. And when you're
Yeah,
right, your reward is minimal. When they're right, the match is over. And
yeah.
that's pretty much kind of like what has happened with the heat mechanic. And Tekken has never been that way before.
It's such a shame as well because when we were playing, like, obviously I use Feng Wei. Feng Wei is a very, very powerful character, and he's still strong without heat. He's still very strong, still very capable, but it's insane what he can do in heat. Like when you actually peel back the layers and you take a move like he has his Kempo forward and he kicks your knee. If on counter hit, you can get a free shoulder from that, which is strong. That's a very strong
Sure.
move, and then you add heat on top of that. So he's just kicked you in the knee, you've fallen down, he's shoulder barged you, it's done a decent amount of damage. Now he's running in your face and he's also Super Saiyan. It's too much. There's way too much going on. When you peel away heat, it's like, okay, Feng Wei's strong, he's still very powerful, but I don't feel like I'm just losing to
Risk
absolute
reward.
nonsense.
A shoulder
Yeah,
is a good punish, right? Risk
yeah,
reward. He took a risk. He got a shoulder. Play Tekken. Now it's he got a shoulder and your combo. GG's.
yeah. The
That's
shoulder should not be able to combo you. I can't stress
a
that
death
enough.
fist is plus and combos. Like that is mind blowing to me in Heat.
Yeah, yeah.
My
In heat, the death fist is
it's
ridiculous.
just it takes the risk reward. So yeah, I understand that. Like for me, I thought I come from Tekken. The last actual Tekken I played was Tekken 6, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
of Tag 2. It did not feel like the power crushes were one thing to me, but then Heat and it was just a lot. And I noticed that the backdashing and the sidestepping, at least from that game, is significantly toned down. From that, even though I know the sidestepping is a little better than 7, from that game they're both toned down to me.
The problem with the sidestepping in this game is it is stronger. It's really good. They actually advise you don't backdash too much sidestep. Problem is that the homing attacks in this game are too strong. Like you have heat when you do a raw heat engager, when it goes into the animation and they sort of slap you over the head. That tracks you. Like you can be sidestepping, the character will do a complete 180 and just hit you over the head. Some of the rage arts will follow you as well. And it's like I worked to get around you. Why is the person that is mashing buttons being rewarded here? They should be punished for this.
Yeah,
And it's a bit annoying because you sidestepping is genuinely good in Tekken 8, but it's overwhelmed by the fact that moves that don't home hit you when you're moving, and the homing moves are already very powerful as it is. So it's
True.
like I hear
Very
what
true.
people are saying when they're like, we're in the first year of Tekken. This is technically the arcade phase. You know, it needs to be a little bit more lenient. I understand that argument because historically, console players have waited 2 years, and so we don't experience the broken mess that the arcade players used to. But we're in a different age now as well, and I think if you're doing a worldwide release, it needs to be ready
I
for a
agree.
worldwide release.
I agree. I mean, look, Heat is just something to where I think it was very experimental, and I think Namco went with it and said, like always, we'll try this. We'll crank the knob up really high on the game, and then we'll kind of see. Like Tekken 6, for example, before BR, a bound, I mean, like a low parry gave you a full combo. Low parry into full combo, into bound, into like there was a lot of stuff. Like there were moves that were safe that would like bind you, and like Bob's while standing 2-2 would bound safe, and it's like people can just throw some of these moves out and you're dead.
Yeah,
And I think his bound forward 2 hit on normal hit, a terrible idea for that game. It would launch you. And they kind of dialed things back. And it was the same way for all their games. 5.0, I think, came to console very early. And of course, arcade owners got very angry. So then they made the 5.1, which people didn't like very much, and then DR.
yeah,
But for the most part, outside of a few straggles aside, Namco has always, the game has been out for at least 1 to 2 years in the arcade, and they could dial the knob all the way up and then dial it down over time. Now, let me just call it what it is. It's the Western audience that finally gets a big exposure to day one of Tekken, right?
yeah,
And they're just like, absolutely not. And Heat is dialed way up. There are a few things that are also dialed way up, and I think Namco is trying to look. As a Sunny, even they said like, okay, we did too much. We'll revisit it later, right? But I think with social media, you don't have time to revisit it later anymore, and I don't think they were ready for that. They're not. They weren't ready for. You don't have the time you used to have. This is just how games are now, and I think this is
yeah.
the Tekken team's first experience dealing with modern gaming where all eyes are on you at all times.
Yeah, yeah. It's a sticky situation, I guess. I'm hoping that Tekken. I'm hopeful for it because it is Tekken at the end of the day, and without the heat mechanic, it was a lot of fun. So my thinking is that it's not like the Street Fighter 6 drive mechanic where the mechanic needs to be present. Like I don't think you can have Street Fighter 6 without drive. It just doesn't work.
No,
It everything is intertwined into
but you can
drive.
have
So
Tekken 6 without heat.
yeah, you
Tekken
can
8
have
without heat. Yeah, you can have Tekken 8
You can
without
have
heat.
Tekken 8 without heat. It doesn't need to be there. And we played for 8 hours straight. It still felt like Tekken 8 without Unga Bunga. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still very offensive and there's still
True.
things in it that are like, but it's okay. Like, it's like these things can be patched out. We can maybe work around them. The heat mechanic is so
It
overwhelming.
feels like people are just throwing out game over combo starters with heat, and you're just going to take it. That's
Essentially, yeah, you have to take it in situations. If I pop heat and I do shoulder on you and press forward, you're gonna stand there and take my mix up. There's nothing that you can do. I mean, you can guess rage art, but that's a massive, massive gamble. And if you try to throw out a button, well, I'm plus because I've just knocked you back with heat. And it's like
yeah.
the shoulder is a launch punishable move, right? It's a launch punishable because it's so powerful. And you've made it a launcher now, and you've also made it a combo, an extender. It's too much. It takes away the beauty of Tekken.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see where Tekken goes with this because this is the first time Namco's had to deal with this.
Yeah.
So, um, interested to see where they go with it, and they're obviously not going to abandon the heat mechanic.
No.
So
No.
I'm assuming if they're going to dial it back at some point. And keep in mind, but Tekken is still played heavily. Its numbers are good. Tekken's numbers
It's
are very
yeah.
good.
Its numbers are good. I mean, it's done. It's what's happened to Tekken is what happens to all fighting games. I guess it has dwindled down. but the numbers are still good. Um, my concern is that people are not happy with the season one DLC because they're all characters apart from Eddie, which is another problem people have. But Lydia, Fakaram, and Marduk, which we know Fakaram and Marduk are coming at this point. Everybody
True.
has leaked it. They're all characters you paid for in Tekken 7. And Eddie has been a mainstay in Tekken for a long time, and he's DLC. And my concern is if they rub people the wrong way with Season 2 DLC, which I'm kind of thinking they might, because a lot of the very, very popular characters are still missing, like Armor King, Anna, Lei Wulong, Bob. You know, a lot of these guys, you're going to have to pay for them, but they've been either starting characters or paid DLC before.
True.
So I don't know how Namco gets around this anger that the Tekken community is feeling, which is not something that I share, by the way. The DLC argument is not a sentiment that I share. I don't mind Lydia. Obviously, I'm not going to complain about Fakram and Marduk. Those are two of my characters. But I am worried that the community's anger towards Namco is going to grow because so many mainstays are not playable. They're going to have to be paid DLC again.
Yeah, I mean, I think really also to your point, they have to be careful with this kind of stuff because today people have a lot of options, with games they
Yeah,
can play. Doesn't even have to be a fighting game. They might go to a different game. There are so many games out to play to entertain you. The majority of the audience is not going to be the hardcore tournament player. The tournaments exist because of the 99% that are on tournament players. Those are the players that allow advertising dollars to get spent and pot bonuses to get paid out, et cetera, because you can get sponsors and advertisers because they know the millions and millions of people that are going to have eyes on it, right? If you remove
yeah,
a lot of that, tournament scenes die down, less money gets put involved, the competitive scene. It all goes, you know what I mean? It just has a downhill effect. And really, there are just a lot of games out there vying for people's time. So really, if things start rubbing people the wrong way and there's enough anger, people are very quick today to say, you know what, I'm just going to leave and play something else.
yeah,
And it's tough to get them back once they get into something else. You're always going to have your hardcore competitive base, but it's really the people around them, that other audience, that really makes up the majority of the scene. You have 1,600 people, you might have 200 tournament players there. You got 1,400 people that play the game tournament wise, but aren't necessarily quote unquote tournament players. You know what I'm saying? They're not
yeah.
tournament pros. Those people, when they move on, it's tough to get those people back. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the kind of tech, because people do seem a little angered right now, or like frustrated. Frustration is the worst type of anger.
Yeah, it's the frustrating seems to be very high because obviously I make my Tekken videos. I try to make the case that I don't play games that I don't like, so I do like Tekken 8. But I just like to point out some of the issues that people are having or some of the discussions, and that is one of the main ones. I think there's an easy way to get around this that can still make people happy, and I think that is to bring back some characters that people don't really expect. So one of my suggestions was they created a full character render of Ancient Ogre in the story mode. So I was like, he's been gone for so long, it would make sense to bring him back
Bring them
now
back.
because Jun has also come back. So people are asking for Armor King and Anna, and I do think they should put them in the game pretty soon. I think people, regardless of them being paid DLC before, Armor King especially is so popular that if he's not in Tekken 8, that might be a bigger problem. But I do think that they should. I think a guest character would be good as well. I don't like an abundance of guest characters, but a really good one, like one that I suggested was Yujiro from the Baki Hanma series. He's so popular and he fits the Tekken aesthetic so well that I think you could pump new life into the game. I don't want an overabundance of guest characters because there's so many Tekken characters that are missing. So I don't want them to go down a Mortal Kombat route. But it would be nice to have like one or two. Someone like Kiryu from Yakuza or Yujiro or Oma from Kengan Asura. I think those things will really help. But I think the balancing of the heat mechanic is the thing that needs to come first. I think that's what's causing the most problems right now.
I think when it comes to when it comes to roster, Tekken has always done well. Whether it's a character that was free is now paid. I I feel like today's players can't say this is the modern era when it benefits them and then complain about it when it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, well, this is the modern era. Our feedback are this. Listen to this. And then when they modern era you, foul. These characters used to be free. Now I got to pay for them. That's the world today. You get to be heard, and all half of your changes and gripes may happen in the game. But at the same time, this same company, the way the modern day is, you get a base roster, then you get DLC characters. Sometimes a character that was free will be paid from one game to the next. That's just how it is. I feel like today's players want to pick and choose from a buffet when a game should be like the modern era when it shouldn't. And that's just part of, I think Tekken has never disappointed with a roster. You know, like I don't know
Yeah.
anyone in Tekken 7 that says this roster is garbage. You know, like
Oh yeah, no, no, definitely. By the end of the game's lifespan, I think everyone was pretty happy with where
yeah,
Tekken
so
7 went.
so I think there's a lot of faith there that their roster will be whatever. People maybe being turned off by their character that was free is now paid. I mean, that's just gaming today, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
definitely.
and normally, like you said before, these things, the more you love a game, the more you're willing to look past it. Okay, well, I love the game. They're doing good things. I enjoy the game. That's fine. That's fine. I'll pay for DLC content, etc. So it really comes down to, I feel like, what they do with the heat. It feels like everything that's really a negative side is based around the heat mechanic.
Yeah.
People don't like it, but obviously they're not going to remove it. So Namco really has to find a way, like, where is the in between, because you don't want to keep it in the game but then have it be next to useless, so you never want to use it then, right? Because then
Yeah.
it's like, well, why is it even here? But so heat is, they introduced, unfortunately, a mechanic that there's a fine line behind being way too much or completely useless. And I
Yeah.
don't know that heat, I think heat is a mechanic that's either going to be dominant or worthless. I don't know that there's a middle ground to there. And I
That's the
think,
problem.
yeah,
I think that's the issue with it. There is no middle ground with Heat. I think that they hit a sweet spot in Tekken 7 because they introduced the rage drives, which are like buffed up versions of the regular moves. And I didn't mind them because it was like, okay, this move is gonna he's gonna throw it out at somewhere at random. Like for example, the Death Fist, right?
mm-hmm.
Paul would hit you with that, and it was like a massive impact, and that was it. It was gone. I do think they should have lasted once per for one round, and that's it. But it wasn't too much. But Heat buffs your whole character, and some characters even gain heat back. Like King will get heat back from doing grabs, and Leroy will get heat back from doing parries, and it's like it's too much. And what you're saying is right. If it's either going to be, it's always going to be too much, or it's going to be obsolete, and the Tekken core is going to overwhelm the heat mechanic. And
Yeah.
I don't think in Tekken 9 we're going to see something like this again. I think they probably know this is such a divisive mechanic, and it's upset a lot of people. You know, we're stuck with it now. I don't think they're going to abandon it, but I don't think we'll see something like this again. Personally,
No, I think this is something that I don't think they anticipated the backlash being like this. I think they figured here's a way to give offense without they pretty much made a system thing to give offense, but then the problem was it was too much, and there's no real way to dial it back without it being too little. So I think they're gonna have to do something else to counteract heat. I
yeah,
feel like that's the only thing that they can do. And then almost like a defensive version of heat that you can also do, and maybe you'll have like a hyper sidestep or hyper backdash ability in that mode. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
something to counteract it. I think that's the only option they have because I feel
yeah. I
like
mean,
heat itself you can't. There's only so much you can do with.
in Lydia's trailer, people are speculating that they've added a defensive
I
mechanic
saw
into the
that
game.
armor
Yeah,
piercing. I saw that.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
a
looked
massive
good.
step in the
That's
right
huge.
direction.
That's huge. People already feel like the power crushes are like, okay, well, you should have to have my advantage, and now people are like, well, I don't care about f your advantage. I'm going to go ahead and power crush. But now there's a counter to that counter, right? To that mind game type of thing. That's that's huge. That's what Tekken has always been like, right? That the counter to the counter to the counter in a lot of ways, right? That layer three of Yomi that you know that you know that you know that that loops everything back to layer one, right? Because now you know. So it's very much that's good mechanic. And I feel like that is the way to go. Rather than remove something, introduce a countermeasure to it. I feel like if you remove heat right now, they would never do that. They're not going to implement it and then just take it out of the game. So they can't scale it down but so much because then it's worthless. But how do you balance out the way it is? You have to introduce a counter mechanic to that. So then it's very similar, much like armor piercing to power crushes, then you would have this as well to heat.
Yeah, I think that if Heat was a more calculated system as well, where maybe you can use it once per match, and then maybe if they give it to you as a full meter at the beginning of the match, and then after
You
you
have to
use it,
build it
you have
up.
to earn it back.
That
Yeah,
would be
I
thing.
think
You have to
yeah, I
build it
think
back.
people would feel less hard pressed if you would do it because it just feels like okay, I'm losing pop heat, and then you've got like I don't know, we were
And then
using
meter's
Fang
full
as an
again next
example.
round. Yeah.
Yeah, meters full again, rage arts there. It's like come on, like
What
make
about what did
people
Soul
work for
Calibur
it.
do? You have to build it. You had to build your meter, right? Once you
Yeah, in Soul Calibur 5, you had to build your meter. I can't remember what Soul Calibur 6 did. I think Soul Calibur 6,
six.
you had to build your meter as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I played Soul Calibur 5 to deaths, and so you had to build your meter. In the last round, they would give you a bar, which I was not a fan of, uh, which it worked out for my character because I was using Algol,
Algal,
and
yeah.
his super move was like, if he touches you with that, you're going to die. But he needed two super bars to do it. Every character could use one super bar, so they could stack two. Algo's super did no damage if you did one, and then massive damage if you did two. So it worked out for me. But objectively speaking, it was stupid to give characters free super bar. But
Yeah.
outside of that, you had to work for it. And some of the moves that you would use in the game were tied to the super bar. So there was a need to be a bit more careful with some of the things that you were throwing out, which some
Gotcha.
players didn't really like, but I actually quite liked it. Um, so yeah, I think if you make people work for things, people will be less annoyed by the fact that they're being hit by it. Like if you were to use an armored heat engager, right? They're safe and they've got armor on them and they put you in heat. And it's like, where's the drawback to this? So what they could do is they could, if I go for Fengway's forward 1+2, which is one of his armored attacks, if I miss that, that should take away a little bit of the heat, even if I'm not in heat. You shouldn't just be allowed to spam a safe move that has armor on it and puts you in heat. And on knockdown, and on hit without heat, it knocks you down, so I get a free stomp. And then you're in a shit situation because I'm standing over you and I'm using Fengway, right? It shouldn't be like that.
But if they gave you the heat on the first round, then once it's gone, you had to build that bar back. I think more people would be more accepting of it.
Yeah, definitely. I would be more accepting of it if they gave you a rage drive as well, the rage art, and every round they give you one is something that I don't like as well. But we've been dealing with that since Tekken
Mm-hmm.
7. If it was a situation where you get your rage art, it's a free super attack, it's one button, but you get it once per fight, so you need to pick where you're going to use this, or you have the opportunity to build it back up. So and then the thing is you get rage, so you get a power boost. Then you
Sure.
get a rage art, so you get a powerful attack that you can throw out. Then you get heat. Within heat, you get loads of moves in heat. You have heat dash. It's like, come on, like there needs to be some work for it on some level.
And sometimes you get the ultimate where you get the heat to the combo in rage and then end with the rage art, and then it's the ultimate like your whole life bar is
Yeah,
gone. Yeah,
and you've been
because
getting juggled for half an hour.
those mechanics can stack on top of each other, which is another issue in itself.
Yeah,
So
which I
yeah,
would be fine with if it was a thing where it's all worked for, it's dished out fairly, and it's gotten to the point in the match where I've saved my heat, I've saved my rage art, I've saved my rage or whatever, and I've caught you in a combo now, and now you're gonna pay for it. Because then it feels like okay, I worked for this, I was calculated, I chose when I was gonna do
wasn't
it.
given to you. Yeah,
Yeah, but in Tekken 8, it's like here it is, here it is, here it is. Every time it's like this is annoying. This is really irritating.
yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how quickly Namco can make their adjustment. They don't have 2 years to do it this time. I would maybe say at most people expect to see some type of changes within the first 7 to 9 months. I don't think they're
Yeah.
going to wait 2 years. I just today, the way gaming is today, I don't think any company has 2 years in order to kind of refine their product to
No, there's too
what
much competition.
yeah, too much competition today. So, but I do feel like Tekken is something that this is the first time the Tekken community has been going through something like this, and even Namco themselves, like with this kind of like public eye on them, which is good, but also has its price. So definitely interesting to see where they're going to go going forward.
Yeah, I think the reaction is so visceral in the Tekken scene because it's the first time that the console players are probably experiencing what the arcade players experienced. Because I remember seeing Akuma in Tekken 7 when it came out on arcades. I don't know if you ever
Yo,
watched
yeah, I remember.
do you
I
remember Green
remember.
Arcade?
Yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't believe when I saw Akuma. I turned to my friends. I was like, "That Tekken's finished. Akuma's taken over the whole
yeah.
thing. He was so
And there was a lot of
ridiculous."
controversy. Yeah, there was a lot of that. Yeah, there was a lot of that. Yep, there was a lot of
So
that with
you
the.
cut out there, Tom, again.
No, I said there was a lot of that with the Kuma. Kuma was, yeah,
Yeah,
Tekken community.
yeah.
Yeah,
They were suffering, but I'm glad
they
we
were.
didn't have to go through that.
No, they were suffering. Yes, they were. So, but
So
this
I
is par for the course for Tekken. They just don't have the same window to refine it that they do
yeah,
now.
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But I want to ask you before we close it off.
Sure.
Is there any fighting games that you're looking forward to, or any sort of fighting games that you hope return that are not Mortal Kombat, Tekken, or Street Fighter?
Any fighting games that I want to see return? That are not Mortal Kombat Tekken. You know what I would love to see? I would love to see another Bloody Roar. Uh,
Which game?
Bloody Roar. So
Oh
I
yeah,
played Bloody Roar. I'm so old. So James Fink actually had a cabinet, the Japanese cabinet in East Brunswick Arcade, called Beasterizer, which
yeah.
is the Japanese arcade version of Bloody Roar. It was originally called Beasterizer. When it went to console, it became Bloody Roar. Absolutely loved the game. And I've played Bloody Roar 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know how many, I think even 4. I don't know what number they're on after that. I don't know where they are now. But I would love to see a main tournament game be, I mean like a mainstream tournament game be Bloody Roar. I would love to see that game get like, okay, you know what? We're going to bring this back. We're going to make it so it's part of the tournament scene. I think that game would be so hyped to watch, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would get into it. Bloody Roar is kind of like that. It's like DOA, only nobody knew about it. You know,
Yeah.
like DOA is a game people know about. Bloody Roar, it's one of those infamous titles. Like you know the name, right? So
Yeah.
it's got a known fighting game, and people are kind of like, I think most people know Bloody Roar, but the jury is kind of out of most people. Was it ever good? Was it bad? You know,
Mm.
there's not enough information. There's nothing harmful that would turn people off from playing it or trying it. So I feel like if Bloody Roar, I'm not trying to say it's as bad as DOA is, but I'm trying to say that like it's got a name that people know. Only DOA actually has had some shine, some spotlight on it at some time.
Yeah.
Bloody Roar never got that moment. I think a lot
Bloody
of
Roar is
people
a
would try
very,
it.
very good game as well. I really enjoyed Bloody Roar 3. I think Bloody Roar 3 is the one with the aquarium stage, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that I really thought that was a good game. I still got it on my PS1 actually somewhere in this room, but I would love to see Bloody Roar come back. It was a very cool idea. It was a bit like what was that PS1 game called? It's like Beast Wars or something.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't ever play
Do you
Beast
remember when you
Wars.
used to run as like an animal and then you could transform into like a robot? I think it was
Yes.
called Beast
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah. I never played that though. I know what game we're talking about though. Yeah. I think Bloody Roar. I think the FGC would embrace it and they would all pick it up and try it. I think it would do very well, and I think it would be great on a tournament stage. That
Yeah.
would be a game that I'd be very, very curious to play. I would definitely pick it up.
Yeah, I think I would like to see that. Personally, I'm looking forward to Sparking Zero. I can't wait for that to come out. If it's anything like the other Sparking games, then
Hmm.
I think that I would love to see a game like that either. I doubt they'll do it, but if it's got the mechanics that the old Sparking games have got, it's going to be very hard to play at a high level, and it's going to be very very entertaining to watch. It's super fast paced, and there's legit fighting game mechanics in it, like parrying and dodging and
Hmm.
the vanishing and managing your meter, and then knowing when to transform and when not to transform, how to use the terrain because you could even hide behind things and trick people into doing
Yeah.
certain things. It's a really really good concept, so I hope they pull it off correctly.
I love how you brought that up with the entertaining because That's another big part of gaming. It's got to be gaming is entertainment, not just to play, but also to watch nowadays. That's otherwise we wouldn't
Mm.
have Twitch and YouTube or any of that. And I think, I guess to wrap it off, that's where MK is least fun to play, least entertaining to watch, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where it is. But there are other games like Sparking Zero, or I think people games that people haven't never even really been seen, like Bloody Roar. They've heard of it, but that I think would really spark people's interest, and they would be entertained in watching it as well as playing it.
No, definitely. 100% agree. But yeah, I think we pretty much covered
Yeah, it
everything.
was a
Unless
good
there's
talk.
anything
I'm
you wanted
glad
to.
you're back from Japan safe. Glad you have a good time, and I guess we'll see where MK goes. We'll see what I'm more curious to see where Tekken's going than MK. I think we already know what the direction MK is going, but
Yeah.
Tekken is kind of like up in the air of which way the wind is going to blow on it. So I'm really interested to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be here for it. You know, I'm a Tekken diehard, so I'll be here watching. I'll be here playing, and I'm sure we'll do another talk on it. And obviously, Lydia's
Absolutely.
out very soon. And then I believe we're probably gonna get Fakram around October for Tiger Uppercut. That's because it's in Thailand as well. So
Sure, makes
then
sense.
we'll probably get Marduk for like winter or maybe like in the new year. So I've got a little bit of time to wait before my character gets here. But I'm glad. I feel sorry for people that play fighting games that have to wait until like season 5 for their character to show up. That
Yeah, that
must be
sucks.
complete
Yeah,
suffering.
yeah, that's true. That's the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man.
So
Well, it's been
yeah,
a good
good
talk, bro.
talk.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, my man. Thanks so much for joining me.
No worries, bro.